What is the point? What is the point in this now? What is the point in me making this video for you? You're not even paying attention. You're not paying attention, are you? You clearly aren't. At the time of recording this, not one of you noticed. Not one of you said anything about the massive error that was in last week's video. What's this week's word of the week? I'm willing to bet that 99.9% of you have enough knowledge to figure out what's wrong. But because none of you were paying attention, none of you noticed. Who here thinks the alphabet has Q going before P? Not one of you noticed that I did Q before P in this chronological, alphabetical, interesting word of the week series. Not one of you said anything. So this week's interesting word of the week contains last week's letter, as last week's interesting word of the week contains this week's letter. So this week's letter is last week's P. Now, since I'm back indoors and I'm not out and about like I have been very recently over the past few videos, some of which went in chronological order, I am able to have the dictionary with me, which does mean that I am able to randomly select this week's interesting word of the week right here, right now. So, this week's interesting word of the week will be found on that page, right there. Go for that page, and oh my god, they've got P's on, not Q's. I don't know who I'm more angry with, you or me, for not noticing until now. My now is earlier than your now, so technically I noticed first. I had to actually point it out to you, so I'm more angry at you. But I made the mistake in the first place. I'm more angry at me. But you didn't notice. I'm more angry. I'll come back to you. So this week's interesting word of the week is paradox. This one is closely related to the word that I chose for the letter before this one, which isn't quid pro quo because quid becomes after quid. This word is closely related to the word I used for the letter before P in the alphabet, which isn't quid pro quo because Q becomes after P in the alphabet. The word I mean is oxymoron, because paradox means a seemingly absurd or self-contradictory statement that is or may be true. So basically, a loose definition for a paradox is something, very loose definition. A very loose definition for a paradox is something that is an oxymoron, something that is oxymoronic. So paradox being a self-contradictory proposition and/or a personal thing exhibiting apparently contradictory characteristics and/or an opinion that conflicts with common belief. Paradox. The most basic form of a paradox is something which does something to stop that one thing, the first thing, happening. And thus one cannot start without the other, and you've got a paradox. You understand? You're following my drift? Are you? Are you? Are you? No? Okay, so how about this? I'm going to give you a couple of examples of some paradoxes. I've just been editing that video and there's no way to keep it below 20 minutes. So I've decided to come back upstairs, set up my camera once again and put on the same t-shirt so it doesn't look that weird, and tell you that you can click all of my examples of some paradoxes because they will be around the screen, around me now. I'm not sure where I'll put them yet, depending on how much space there is. You'll be able to click an annotation on there and they will take you to that example, which is on another video separate to this video. And then once you finish watching that, there is an annotation at the end which will bring you back to this moment in time, or maybe 10 seconds ago, so you can click another one if you want to, or you can always just carry on and watch the rest if you want. Watch the rest of this week's interesting word of the week. So I will give you 5 seconds to deliberate before we move on. Okay, so there are some examples of some paradoxes. Hopefully you know what it means now. There are some examples of some paradoxes, there is a definition of some paradoxes, so what are some other words for the word paradox? Okay, other words for paradox include contradiction, absurdity, ambiguity, anomaly, enigma, oddity, and puzzle. So there we have it. You can use any of those words in place of the word paradox to explain what a paradox is. Maybe you can use the word enigma or puzzle to explain what a paradox is. I just said that. Okay, so let's check what Urban Dictionary says paradox means. So, one of the entries for paradoxes. So paradoxes are somewhat like a mindfuck. Paradoxes are usually used as an example for the impossible, or that God exists. Their example is a very common one. It's based on the fact of going back in time and time travel. Time travel is a very common cause for paradoxes. He writes that you prevent your mother from creating yourself with your dad, but as a result you wouldn't exist, therefore you couldn't do it in the first place. So because you couldn't exist, you can't stop yourself being created. But as soon as you are created, you stop yourself from being created, and thus because you don't exist, you can't stop yourself from there. And it's an infinite cycle. It's an infinite loop. I will have to bid you farewell. So if you would like to see last week, interesting word of the week, which is technically supposedly this week, but there was some time travel and things went a little bit wrong, you can observe that video by clicking it up there. If you would like to see next week's video, which is technically not next week's but the week's after's video, I will stop this after next week's video, you can also see it by clicking in the top right hand corner of the screen. And that is about all for this week's interesting word of the week, so I will have to bid you farewell. So hopefully I'll catch you later.